Welcome to another MSP event and happy Friday, Junior. I'm super excited to dive right into the content. We have amazing guests here today to talk about Level Up Reps 101 that drive revenue. But before we dive into the content, I'm sure folks are still trickling in. I love to start things off with a fun icebreaker. Pete, Sean, I know that both of you went to karaoke last night, so I'd love to know, what is your go-to karaoke song? Pete?
Oh, I have to go first? All right,
Yeah.
fine. Well, so my go-to last night, so as the revenue leader over here at Atrium, I of course had to go first in order to lead by example and show people to like not be not to be nervous. So I sang "Shake It Off" by Taylor Swift, and it was like oddly exhausting. Um, because I like told my wife when I got home, she's like, "Oh, what did you sing?" I was like, "Shake It Off." She's like, "Oh, nice." She's a big Taylor Swift fan, and I was like, "God, that song's kind of long." She's like, "Oh yeah, why did you choose it? That was dumb." I was like, "Thanks."
Not only that, but there was a dance routine associated with it, so that
Yeah.
I'm sure added to the
Yeah,
exhaustion.
yeah, it was a lot. Yeah,
There
it
was
was
some
a lot.
shaking.
I didn't realize that there was twerking in the music video.
There's a lot of shaking. Sean, what about you?
So, I mean, I like to just pull on some heartstrings when going at karaoke, like you should, to get the crowd involved.
As you
So,
should.
like the middle school throwbacks are always like the arena that I want to live in. So
Like
I opened up
Wonderwall?
sure. But last night I opened up with Confessions Part 2 by Usher.
Oh, that type. Nice. Very
Yeah.
nice. I thought you were thinking about like Wonderwall, kind of like that action, but Confessions by Usher is also a classic fave.
Same same
Everyone knows
era.
him.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep,
Everyone knows
yep.
him.
exactly
It's a
same era.
slow jams. Yeah.
I like to start things off really on a high note. Living by a Prayer by Bon Jovi. I don't know if I
Oh
can hit the high
wow,
note sometimes. I need to definitely warm my voice up, but that's the type of song that I like to kick things off with.
I love it.
Um,
That,
well, speaking
that's
of kicking
super
things
dope.
off, let's start off with this event. So, super excited to dive into the content. For those of you who are not familiar, this event is brought to you by Modern Sales Pros. Hi, everyone. My name is Angelica. I'm one of the community event managers at MSP. And for those of you who are not familiar, Modern Sales Pros is the world's largest and highest quality community of those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our modern sales pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer questions they struggle to solve on their own. We do this through live sessions, our online forum, our quarterly summits, which I'll talk a little bit more after the slide, and our in-person events. So if you're in the Bay Area next week, we actually have a Dreamforce happy hour at De La Rosa.
Yeah,
So come join Sean and Pete, and I'll actually drop the registration link in the chat.
it's gonna be
We'd love to
awesome.
see you there. It's going to be great.
I mean, the location is bananas, right? Because
Hmm.
it's like 2 blocks from Moscone. I can't believe we got that venue. It's like amazing. Yeah, it's gonna be super fun. De La Rosa is like nice too. I mean, it's
Hmm.
like not it's not like crazy or whatever. It's like very solid, but like it's so close to Moscone. It's amazing.
And if you like this content, you'll love our 3 day Revenue Excellence Summit happening next month on October 11th to the 13th. We pulled together 24 events of amazing content and speakers. You'll hear from CEO at Zoom Info, Gainsight, Cowboy Ventures, Winning by Design, as well as sales leaders at Lattice, Pendo, Outreach, Atrium, and more. Here's the link to sign up. I'm actually also going to add that in the chat. So definitely register and secure your spot today. Now
This
enough
is
about,
this one's
yeah,
crazy. The
yes.
like the speakers on that are just like bananas. I love how like
Hmm.
Atrium is in there with like Gainsight and like Gong, and it's like and Atrium.
Let some
We'll take
knuckleheads
it.
in there.
We'll take it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Who's the bouncer? He or she's fired.
Well, speaking about Atrium, our amazing sponsor today, I'm actually going to pass it off to you, Pete, to say a few words about Atrium, and I'll come back for some housekeeping notes.
Killer, yeah. Hey folks, we'll introduce me and Sean a little bit here in a second, but we work for Atrium. Just for folks who may not be familiar, Atrium is makes data-driven sales management software. It's software that helps sales managers, leaders, and reps use metrics to improve performance. And one of the things that's really great about Atrium is it's like astronomically quick to set up. Just takes 3 minutes to set up a free account, read-only connection to your CRM, and like presto changeo, you've got a world-class metrics harness, automatically being monitored for all of your AEs, SDRs, et cetera, telling you exactly what's going on with which rep and why. So but we think about data-driven sales management quite a bit, and one kind of component of that is one-on-ones, and so that's why I'm really excited for us to be talking about one-on-ones here in the presentation. So, Angelica, you said we have some housekeeping.
Yeah, so just quick housekeeping notes before we dive right straight in. This event is going to be recorded. So if your colleagues or friends couldn't make it, don't worry, we'll have the recording and key takeaways at the MSP website by the end of the day. And if you have a question for Sean and Pete, please use the Q&A function at the top right-hand corner and also leverage the chat as well. We'll be sure to get your questions before the end of the event. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Pete again to introduce himself and Sean, and then I'll come back during the wrap up. Pete, take it away.
All right, yeah, she'll come back on with the hook. Get out of here, you're talking too much. Get gone. All right, I'm gonna flip us over here. I'm gonna share my screen so I can drive. See if I can figure out how to do this. Da, 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 da. All right, did I do that right?
I think so.
All right, cool. Gosh, I need a new headshot.
It's a good one. Come on.
Uh, not a huge fan. Anywho, all right, stop being vain. Hey, folks. So my name's Pete Kazanjy. I'm one of the founders here at Atrium. I also, my fancy pants title is CRO. Here, I'm responsible for the sales, success, and marketing organizations here at Atrium. Before Atrium, started a software company called Talent Bin, recruiting software company that was acquired by Monster Worldwide in 2014, and that was really kind of like where I started my you know modern sales management journey, because I was a business generalist founder. I was our first sales rep after kind of realized like, hey, somebody's got to like sell this thing. First sales rep, first sales manager, first sales leader. When we were acquired by Monster Worldwide, I was responsible for new product sales over there. 1,000-person sales organization, and so a little bit of a different thing there. After I left Monster, I wrote a book on startup sales called Founding Sales, and also started Modern Sales Pros. And so that's a little bit on me. Sean, would you like to tell folks about what you like to spend your time on?
Sure thing. Hey everyone, my name's Sean Cardenas. Growing up, definitely didn't anticipate that I was going to be a sales manager one day. I love sports, I love coaching, and as I got older and in college, I love statistics. So I actually wanted to be in the sports world, but little did I know, sales was really like my calling. So I started over at Yelp back in 2017. I was an account executive there for a while before being a manager for a year of 15 reps, which was super fun, not exhausting
That's a Yelp.
whatsoever.
That's a Yelp span of control right there.
That is a
15 to
Yelp
1.
span of control. So then fast forward, and you have my blend of coaching expertise and then my love for
Yep.
data. And this guy named Pete Kazanjy said, "I'll take a shot on you. You might have a chance of being okay here." So after being a rep for about 3 years, I'm now managing a team of 6 over here.
Yep, absolutely fantastic. And for folks who may not be in the know, Yelp sales managers are kind of like sleeper, super data-driven sales managers, because one, with a span of control of like 15 people, you kind of gotta be. Guess what? You can't like do like artisanal sales management, like, oh, I'm going to be on every call or whatever, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit here. And then also like Yelp just has like a wonderful velocity sales motion. You see this with like SMB, kind of like local biz sales motions in general, like whether it's like Yext, 5 stars, etc. Because like you have so much sample size, like those organizations oftentimes kind of get a data driven muscle going earlier than other orgs. This isn't to say that, of course, like only velocity sales motions can be measured, because like that's absolutely ridiculous. That's the sort of thing that like a dinosaur sales manager would say right before he or she gets fired by their board. But but don't sleep on the Yelp sales management diaspora. Cool. So before we get started here, something with my glasses. Just wanted to offer folks some kind of resources here. We're obviously big fans of helping organizations and managers be better at sales management, at sales coaching. These are some of our my favorite resources right now. Cracking the Sales Management Code is a book on essentially like sales analytics. 5 secrets. It's very, I don't want to say it's very academic, but it's like it's not nothing, right? It's very detailed. It's quite excellent. 5 secrets of the sales coach is kind of like the yin with the yang there, where it's focused on it's written as a narrative. It's all about like sales coaching. It has a data component to it, but it's also about like the other things that you have to do as a sales manager and as a coach. Candid feedback, holding people accountable, et cetera, et cetera. It's extremely well written, but it's by Hillman Sori and Corey Bray, who are good friends of Modern Sales Pros, and we have a bunch of shared customers with their company Closed Loop over here at Atrium. And then of course John McMahon's Qualified Sales Leaders is just like super fun because he's the father of MedPick. So if you guys want to get a copy of each of these books, and also we'll send you a Coffee is for Closers Yeti here, just go ahead and hit the link that we're going to drop in the chat there. You can sign up for this. All we ask for in exchange is a quick disco call with one of our lovely sales strategy advisors over here. That's our fancy phrase for account executive there. All right, killer. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about one-on-ones. And so one of the things that we talk about here at Atrium that we believe very deeply is that that first line manager, whether it's an AE manager, SDR manager, AMCSM manager, those first line managers are really like astronomically important for the success of sales organizations. And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? Because you got six reps going in, and the 8, 10, maybe 15 if you're Yelp. And so like it's a source of leverage where if someone can make 6 people, 8 people, 10 people much better, that's very powerful. And so this, you don't have to ask us about this. Gartner talks about this as well. All sorts of wonderful benefits come out of it. One of the things that kind of pops out to me that's really interesting is like, yeah, some of these things are, you get 26% higher rep productivity, 40% higher rep effort. But really the big thing here is that those managers, they make all their reps better. And so what ends up happening is rather than having like, 8 AEs that are reporting into you and like, 2 or 3 are top performers and they're like kind of carrying the rest of the team, if you can get that fourth, fifth, sixth rep top performing, well, now all of a sudden you've changed the game. And so the way that you do that, of course, like that doesn't just happen magically. The way that you do that is by coaching, right? Through what we call data-driven sales management. And so like, congratulations, that's your job as a sales manager. Like, oh, you thought you were a super rep? Oh no, no, right? Your job is to make your people better. And so one of the like, there's a set of things that you have to do in order to make your people better. Yes, one of those is helping reps with deal inspection and strategy and what have you. Sean, I think most AE managers don't have to be encouraged to talk about deals with their reps. It's always top of mind, and so unfortunately, it's so top of mind it typically like crowds out all the other stuff. And
It
so the
develops
other
a rep's a good stiff arm of like, I got this, boss.
the manager,
Yes.
right? Like the Heisman. Yeah, and so but what we advocate is that there's actually an extended set of capabilities as a manager that you need to be able to do. You need to be tracking progress towards goals, both leading indicators and lagging indicators. I have a whole master class on setting and managing with goals. You got to be bringing data into your one-on-ones, like having one-on-ones consistently, and also importantly bringing data to coach in those one-on-ones, not deal strategy, right? Like that's different, right? But like having one-on-ones that are focused on coaching, on improvement areas, that's going to be the focus of what we're going to be talking about today. You got to be monitoring, progress on ramp, because it's obviously extraordinarily critical time in a rep's tenure. And then for your already ramped reps, what you have to be paying attention to is like identifying issues and fixing them, and then standardizing the success of top performers. So taking those top performers, figuring out like what is the secret of their success, why their win rates are superior, why their ASPs are superior, fill in the blank, and then syndicating that to the rest of the team. And so a really great way of doing all of these things is in the one-on-one. So that's what we're going to talk about. Don't ask us, ask our buddy Richard Harris here, sales trainer to the stars. we love Richard. One of the things that we do with our customers is because like Atrium is very focused on data-driven sales management and like making it extraordinarily easy for AE, SDR, and AM CSM managers to use data to improve performance of their reps. But we're not in the business of like teaching managers how to manage. We'll teach them how to use metrics, right, and data in that management process. But one of the things that we observed was that helping managers like be better at having direct conversations, coaching conversations, giving constructive feedback, holding people accountable was something that our customer success managers were end up kind of doing a lot. So we're like, man, we should just like put on a clinic on this monthly. And so we actually do that with Richard Harris here. And one of the things that he kind of talks about in that boot camp is how to do one-on-ones. Sean, what do you think is like kind of the biggest issues that you see with kind of like new sales manager? I mean, you and also like mid senior sales managers,
Yeah.
because at this point, like you've worked with dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of Atrium customers. What are the kind of the biggest gaps that you've observed there?
Yeah, so like the easiest thing to do that can be a gap is managers were so good at like closing their own deals, but like managing their own deals and navigating their own deals that's usually like the constant coaching conversation that they want to be having.
Sure.
And so it's like stepping outside of that and now not only looking at like all of your reps' deals because you guys share responsibility in that, but it's also like your reps' education of like the sales process from start to beginning is now your new pipeline. So just like in sales, when it's like you're not only focused on your down funnel pipe, the things that are closest to the money, but it's like thinking about all of the other smaller
Yeah.
things that you have to be managing to. And that can be tough to learn.
Yep. Yep. But a great way of doing that is just make sure that there's what do we talk about on the calendar here at Atrium? Calendar is destiny,
Calendar is destiny.
right? Calendar is destiny. And so making sure that you have a place on the calendar for this stuff is really important. And so the one-on-one is really is a great place for that. All that work to be done, that work of management work to be done. And these are the different things that you can spend your time on in those one-on-ones, right? Specifically around coaching and developing changing behavior, because that's the thing that we do is we change behavior for the better. And that's actually how we up level folks there. um, Kind of the way this is a kind of a recommended structure for a one-on-one here. I think we'll actually drop this template here, this working doc. This is just like a Google Doc that we put together. We actually, for our one-on-ones, we actually use a product called 15Five. They're actually another Atrium customer. They're fantastic, and we use their one-on-one software with like hyperlinks off to like Atrium assets, to metrical assets. But this is something that we used in the past before we started using 15Five. But the whole idea here is like whatever you do, whether you're using a Google Doc or something else that's kind of purpose made, is you want to make sure that like you have a place on the calendar for the one-on-one. You're not skipping them. Sometimes you have to move them around totally because like, oh man, we got to get on a call with this, the CFO of XYZ. Like, cool. It's not like nuke the one-on-one. It's move the one-on-one, right? We can't skip our one-on-ones because then like bad things happen. Um, and so these are some of the topics that we encourage folks to kind of bring up. Like, you have a space for reps to bring up any sort of topic that they want to cover. But then importantly, like the work of management is, hey, here's the thing that we're working on right now. We last week or 2 weeks ago or whatever your kind of operating rhythm is there. This is the thing that like this is where we left off. This is what we agreed as our outcome from that. And then we're going to come back today and we're going to see if like the outcomes that we had prescribed or the tasks that we had asked you to execute have actually been done from an accountability standpoint. And so maybe we can drop the hyperlink to this template um, into the chat here. Sean, what are some of your favorite kind of like one-on-one topics?
So I like to one always open it with just like being a human being. Like we talk about data, and a lot of people could think like, oh, atrium folks, like all they talk about is the numbers, but it's like always really important to step aside from that and just see like how people are doing on a human level. The next thing after that is anytime like in my one-on-ones with reps, it's always based around metrics that we verbally talk about like in team meetings at a higher level. We set goals on them, so everyone always knows like what is to be talked about, what is expected, and then it's reiterating that in the larger like team meetings. So in every one-on-one, like with Atrium, I have those reports slacked off on a Tuesday to them, so they can actually read the reports first, and that's on things like how many opportunities are getting to like our pilot stage, how many new opportunities are we getting on a weekly basis. So if they see something that's up, my reps now, because they use Atrium, can kind of coach themselves, and so we come to solutions rather than like uncovering things and like being like, oh gosh, this is scary. I didn't expect to see that. So that's a bit of like what I like to go through in one-on-ones.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, that's actually something that we've come to really appreciate over the last like 12 to kind of like 18 months, I would say, is kind of like the rep self-management thing. I mean, I think like look, we believe that data-driven sales management is like the future, and it's kind of inarguable. Like if anyone's seen the movie Moneyball, like come on now, right? Um, but it's kind of one of those things where it hasn't been like evenly distributed. And I think one of the things that we've observed in the market is, the sales managers who are maybe a little bit like more junior in their career, like, maybe you, Sean, or people who are like between your age and my age. We've grown up with like Fitbits and Pelotons and Strava and so on, like, baseball analytics or like basketball analytics or whatever. And I think that's actually true for reps as well. Like as a manager, you get it, right? Because you're like, I've got 8 reps, and how do I possibly pay attention to all of them? And so you kind of put those things together. With reps, historically, I think a lot of times people are afraid that bringing data into a one-on-one or using metrics for management feels micromanagerial, feels kind of like
Yeah.
maybe a little like scary. Now, of course, and I think that that's really shifted quite a bit in
Yeah.
the last bit as well, given that those folks have Whoops and they have Strava and they have Peloton and so on and so forth. So like don't sleep on the idea of like self-management and like empower it. Like don't hoard the data to yourself. Like
Yeah.
give it away, right? Such that they can self-manage as well,
That's such a good point, boss, because like it's not productive and it actually increases like time in one-on-ones if you're just presenting something that's like brand new to like a
Yeah.
rep. Like we're all incredibly like able to manage ourselves, so give people time, have things broadcasted more than just once throughout the week. It's going to be way more productive in like the development of a rep.
Yeah, for sure. And so just to kind of like touch on why using data is important here, in case like people didn't get it. Like as a manager, what your responsibility is you're there to like measure and monitor, like diagnose issues, and then help to change behavior. And so like the historical way of like monitoring and measuring without data ends up being like very, very, very laborious. Like as an example, like riding along on calls is like super low leverage. I can only imagine at Yelp, you got 15 sellers. Like how the heck are you going to be on a call, with the right person at the right time, et cetera, et cetera.
I average
Um,
five
and
hours of talk time a day
yeah,
on calls.
and yeah, and also it can be like hit or miss, right? Like whack-a-mole. Like oh,
Yes.
so and so's on a connect right now versus not. Even when you have calendar meetings, it's like hard.
Hmm.
Obviously, closing deals for your reps is just like absolutely bananas. It's just like so low leverage and just like silly, because you're not developing them. Like it might feel important to get the thing across the line, but you're not developing them. Similarly, like when you're just doing kind of like pipeline inspection and deal inspection, like the problem with that, and I don't have a good metaphor for it quite yet, but it's almost kind of like a blind man kind of like feeling like an elephant, right? Where like what you're doing is you're getting these like little kind of like snippets of a person's sales motion by like inspecting deal by deal. And ideally what you would eventually do is like then figure out like what the problem is with the rep, or like what their biggest problem is. The problem is like it's very hard to kind of like do that like inductive reasoning to say, oh, you know what? I'm seeing across all of these deals this pattern of issue here. And then moreover, sometimes you actually don't see an issue in the deals. It's more along the lines of like, it may not manifest in the deals like, oh, you just have like low activity, or you just have XYZ, right? Similar, and all of this just gets like harder and harder and harder. Um, all of this just gets like harder and harder and harder in a remote environment. And so similar, and even though like listening to calls can be, you think that it's something that can be helpful there, but it ends up not, like, again, it's kind of like low leverage.
Yeah,
Even if you're listening at like 1.5x, like, are you listening to the right call, et
right.
cetera, et cetera. um so Sean, what's your kind of perspective on this?
I love what you just said because sometimes we can outsmart ourselves as like coaches, and I've definitely like fallen victim to this, especially when I was like team lead, where I would do like nuanced advice on how to like operate one deal or how to talk to like one person at a specific op, but it wasn't applicable to every one of the opportunities that my reps were working, right? And so what you just said right there of having more like blanketed things of advice on an op by op level, it not only like simplifies things, but it helps the rep do the closing on their end versus me as a manager having to be a super rep and coming up with a new solution on this deal and on this deal. It's like, no, 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 no. Let's use one small thing and blanket that across all of these ops that you have in this specific stage right now. So I loved what you said right there. I almost want to ask you like what the challenges were you saw with me when you were managing me, boss. You can just say no though. There was no
his,
problems.
his hair, he's too nice, his hair's too good, all these sort of like prototypical things. All right, so this is why, like, and so this is why our argument to folks is like, hey, you should use data in order to to measure and manage and improve your teams, because there's like so many great things come out of it. Not only is it much higher leverage, you can actually see from a feedback loop standpoint, like, is the stuff that you're coaching on, is it getting better? You're not getting surprised by stuff, right? Like, you don't get like kind of smacked in the face at the end of the quarter. You see around corners, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're going to talk about a little bit about how to actually use metrics in a one-on-one. And so one of the kind of metaphors that we like to use, or kind of concepts we like to use when talking about this, is this concept of like the OODA loop, right? And we call it, which actually comes from this guy John Boyd, who's a pretty famous air-to-air combat theorist. And um, and so what it is, it's the OODA stands for observe, orient, decide, and act, right? Observe, orient, decide, and act. And so what that involves is, the observation is, hey, I'm observing what's happening in the world, right? I'm orienting. Once I observe what has happened, I then orient appropriately and say, oh, okay, got it. That, like, this is undesirable right here. This is like the potential defect. I'm going to orient around that. Now I'm going to figure out what like the best appropriate action would be here, and then I'm going to act accordingly. And then importantly, what you have to do is you have to then like loop back, right? Because you're going to act and say, hey, I'm going to coach this rep on untouched opportunities. I'm going to coach this rep on pipeline hygiene. I'm going to coach this rep on this. I'm going to coach this rep on that. You then have to then loop back again to observe again and see, hey, did that thing that we were going to do and fix, right? Did that prescription actually come to pass? And so this is kind of what that looks like here in sales management. In a no data environment, kind of your observation and detection really isn't much. It's like, oh, I didn't really like see this issue, or like, oh, I kind of got a vibe, but I'm not so sure. The way that you can inspect or kind of like orient is around, like, you have to like ask questions like, hey, how are you feeling about XYZ? um, and then the problem, of course, is like, that's a bunch of opinions. Oftentimes what can happen is that this leads to people, or like managers, not, I don't know if I'm right, I don't know, like, so I'm not gonna act, right? And I think we see this quite a bit here, where man, like this is a bad loop right here, because it leads to people like not actually taking action, and that's what we're supposed to do as managers. And so with data, what you can do is like you see something like, oh, there's something weird over here, right? Then you can say, hey, I'm going to double click into this, dig into the data, see what the issue is, right? Like, oh man, that's what's wrong right there, and then take an action to then fix it. Um, Sean, what have you seen in your customers around how this approach works so effectively?
I mean, I think this is great, and I think that it's also one thing that I talk about with a lot of folks. I have like a privilege of working with a lot of really smart sales managers out there, is honing in on specific themes like with data, right? Because sometimes we'll try to go way too holistic and include like prospecting and pipeline hygiene and like deal conversion all in the same kind of like one-on-one, and that can just be a lot to just like number one get through, and two for everyone to like kind of digest. So like with data, like using one specific theme on prospecting or one specific theme on like deal velocity efficiency, and then digging into it and making it more black and white is how reps can digest and then do the thing we're talking about here, which is the acting part.
Yep. Yep, totally. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to operationalize this a little bit here, but just kind of like really quickly, quick commercial from your sponsor here from Atrium, because this essentially is what Atrium, is part and parcel for here. So what we say is that Atrium is, because managers matter so much, they deserve something that is purpose made for these use cases, for being a manager. And so essentially what Atrium looks like in practice is, imagine a situation where you have every single KPI that you care about for your AEs, SDRs, AM, CSMs, already pre-baked out of the box. But then importantly, it's all those metrics are being monitored, right? Proactively tracking progress towards goals, early warning alerting on all those metrics statistically, and then moreover, root cause analysis of where there are issues. And so all of this just comes to the purpose behind all of this is to help sales managers and leaders and reps use metrics to improve the performance of the teams. Conveniently, we work with hundreds and hundreds of modern sales organizations to help them do just that. We actually need to update this. But
We
yeah,
left
it's
out
like
some friends. There's some more on there.
I know we left out some friends, and also we need to change that, make that number a lot bigger. But anyway, cool. So like back to our regularly scheduled program here. So then the question is like, how do you systematize um, these OODA loops in your one-on-one? And so the first thing is you got to make sure that you actually are systematizing observation, right? You got to make sure that you have the things in place in order to observe. A couple of different ways to do that. Obviously, CRM reporting and dashboarding is one of the ways that organizations will do that. Usually available in your CRM, which can be nice. The problem, of course, is that it's pretty time consuming to get that stuff together. Even if you do have a sales operations function to kind of help you out there. And then moreover, if you're creating that, like, yeah, now someone's got to like babysit, like actually look at it, like bird dog it. um, BI, of course, is like the big brother of all of that as well, has the same sort of components as well. And then, of course, like what we like to talk about is like data-driven sales management software. It's extremely quick to set up. It's a little less flexible so than some of those other folks. Like what we say about like BI as an example is like, hey, what's great about it is like you can ask any question you want, but guess what? Like you have to be the person to ask it or file a ticket against the sales ops or the BI team in order to make that happen. And then the last thing with purpose-made software is it's actually automatically monitored there. Um, then once you have those assets in hand, now what we want to do is we want to systematize observation. And so what that means is making sure that there's time on the calendar for that, making sure that it's in your operating rhythm. These are some of the kind of the meetings that we recommend folks think about having kind of in their operating rhythm. Sean, what's your favorite on the
Uh,
in the cupboard?
That's hard to say like which one is my favorite. Well, I have like half of my squad right now is ramping. Like I have one rep we just promoted from SDR to AE. Love him, Trent, who crushed it at karaoke last night. And the call coaching is a lot of fun there because you're like setting up like some of the the pillars in place for them to manage their own deals, be on their own calls moving forward. So I love the call reviews, but like I'm a nerd and we use Atrium. So the data driven one on ones are always a lot of fun,
Mhm.
especially because like everyone's driving towards the same metrics every single time. So we're all on the same page. Meetings are more efficient. It's less of like, I hate you, Sean, at the end of a meeting, and more like, yes, I'm going to go do that right now. I'm sure it's
Mhm.
probably like half and half. You can probably pull my team, and it just depends on the day.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm a really particularly big fan of, like, yes, the one-on-ones are really important. I think that QBRs are really underappreciated, and I almost kind of like think about them as like a mega one-on-one. Um, and it just, if you think about it, like say you're doing one-on-ones weekly or you're doing them every other week, well, in a quarter, if you're doing it weekly, that's gonna be 12 one-on-ones, and if you're doing a bi-week, it's gonna be 6 one-on-ones,
Right.
and like those are the kind of like the touch points, and then you want to force a look back situation from a QBR, like as with QBR, say, hey, these are the things we're working on, did we achieve them? Also, what were the big, like it's a good forcing function to take a moment and say, what were the big issues that we detected that like maybe we had a shortfall on last quarter? For you, maybe it's win rate. For you, maybe it's average selling price. What was the deal on the, oh, your win rate suffered because you had an issue with these up market
Right.
ops. Great. We're gonna like that's gonna be, we're gonna set our intention for this coming quarter to really focus in on that and work on that well. um, and also it's a great place to kind of see what was particularly successful for a rep, so then we can do that stuff we were talking about before about um, spreading that to the rest of the team, right? And that, like, it's a good place as a manager, as a leader, to kind of like give yourself space. Again, calendar is destiny. To force yourself to go through the metrics, to look at what, what was outperforming, what was underperforming, what have you, and then use that to make the next 90 days and the next 6 one-on-ones, the next 12 one-on-ones more effective. um, Cool. So then what we're going to talk about is like, how do you systematize orientation and decision making? And so really what that kind of comes down to is like how you can get good at reading the data. Um, and so we've selected these metrics. We've set these goals, we've built visualization, et cetera, et cetera. And so next, what we're going to do is we have to detect, diagnose, and then communicate these things to our staff. And so detection ends up being something that it can be a little bit of a challenge for some folks. You got to make sure that you have to get comfortable, kind of like reading the tea leaves, if you will. One of the things that you can do is you can look for for issues and bright spots. And so in this case, the ways to do that is when you're comparing people from a total standpoint, like this right here is an Atrium card right here. You can see that this is customer facing meetings, pretty basic KPI, right? Kind of inarguable. Like, what do we do as account executives? We have meetings with people. You can see we have, one person who's really crushing it with respect to meetings. We got someone who's like, kind of down in the dumps there. And so like these would be great examples of like a bright spot and somebody who's like, and a worrisome kind of like issue there. Same with like trends, right? So with trends, and this is why in another master class, when I'm talking about creating these assets, you oftentimes what you want to do is you want to put together like a total with a trend side by side, because with the trended views, what you can see is you can see if there's like deterioration happening, like this guy right here, Nutsy the Vulture, or what have you, right? How
Dang
long
it,
has he
Nutsy.
been low? Right. Yeah, I know. Dang it, Nancy. Like, how long has he been low like this? Is it just like a one-off thing? Right? Is he down and then pop back up again? Okay, cool. Maybe I'm less worried. Is he consistently down? Right. And you kind of see some of this here. Like this orange guy right here has been trending down over time. This dark blue guy has like been pretty low for quite some time. So this is the way that you can kind of do it like visually. Um, and then one kind of more modern way of doing this is to do it like statistically. and this is something that we encourage our customers to do, is to use kind of the parts of Atrium that will do this statistical monitoring for you, and say, hey, here's this individual right here. They are lower at some key metric like new opportunity inflow as compared to their peers. That seems like a problem, right? Or hey, this person's improving as compared to themselves historically. And so you being able to like statistically pay attention to that versus
Yeah.
us having to like what do we call it, dashboard dive, right? Or dashboard
Yeah.
dig can be
Yeah.
a very powerful thing. How do you kind of like help people do a better job of kind of like reading the data?
Yeah, this is a good question, and I've learned this from you, boss, over the years. Like, what Salesforce dashboards do or like Tableau dashboards, it's a lot of comparing to like other people on the team. And so you can get lost in like what to actually do when it is peer-to-peer analysis versus like your example here of looking at trends over time. You can see both the
Hmm.
positive ones and the negative ones and get to be that person rather than just like a lieutenant and be like, hey, what's blocking you here? Right. So there's been like examples like on my team of like opportunities actually being in certain stages for far too long. Well, it's because like one of my reps actually was just like way too filled up with other administrative tasks like on their calendar. They weren't
Yeah.
able to like effectively like, move things down funnel. And that was really easy
Hmm.
to see like over time, oh no, we've been providing like too many of these things. Let's clear some calendar space, make sure we have the time to
Yep.
do things that we ought to. So that's what I like to see.
Yeah, and I think what you're describing right there is the next step, of course, which is we have to diagnose what the issue is,
Yeah.
right? And so, I think in your case, you were saying that there was and this right here is, these are what we call them, like these driver trees, these metrics inspection trees. We actually have these in laminate format. Where are they? On my desk here. Right? And if anyone wants to sign up to grab a copy, I think we can get the link dropped in the chat here. They're pretty nice, just like have on your desk for your managers. But the idea here is like you want to be able to diagnose and kind of go upstream if you have an issue. And I think, Sean, what you were kind of talking about there, like it's, you can't just pay attention to like a metric,
No.
right? Like it's always like a set of things like, oh, okay, cool. This person's bookings are off. Why are they off?
Right.
Oh, their wins are lighter than
Yeah.
everybody else. Okay, is that because they're not getting enough at bats, or because their win rate is problematic?
Right.
Oh, their win rate is problematic. Okay, got it. If their win rate is problematic, where's that coming from? Is it
Right.
because they have a pipeline hygiene problem, maybe as indicated by untouched ops? Is it an opportunity conversion problem? Where is the opportunity convert? Like what stage in the funnel are they having issues at? Or it might be totally different. Like they might be having a bookings problem,
Right.
but the ASP is the problem. Like they have plenty of wins. Okay, why is the ASP low? Is it because their win rate is bad on big ops? Is it because their average op size is too small? Is it
Yeah.
because they're discounting too much? So this is in order to diagnose, like you don't need like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of metrics, but you definitely need the ones that are like surround an issue in
Yeah.
order to be able to diagnose like where the potential problem is. How have you kind of seen this, or like how do you use this approach in your management, Sean, and how have you seen your customers doing it?
So number one, this like isn't inherent. This is like a skill that you need to exercise continuously, which is why the
Yeah.
laminates are great. So please take advantage of those because you have
Yeah.
to practice actually always working backwards. Otherwise, what I've seen is managers always gravitate towards what's closest to the money. Let me hop on this
Yeah, of
call and
course.
let me go down and close it. So it's like role playing almost like with yourself, like on your own data or with like a rep's data before that. And so something that I like to do like with my directors in the past is, hey, I have a rep that has this problem. I'd like to go down certain scenarios with you using data to figure out like what the root cause is. Practicing like with your director, like I can do with Pete or with my VP Milena, is incredibly important. Otherwise, you go into that one-on-one, you start to try and exercise like using data in that, and then you start doing word vomit, right? So exercise, exercise, exercise on things like this. So what I've seen is a lot of the smart managers out there, because there's a ton of them in the SaaS world, they practice this stuff, and that's great.
Yeah. Um, cool. So that's how we systematize the diagnosis there. So the next thing is, of course, we have to loop back. We were talking about. great way to do that is that template, that one-on-one template we were talking about. Again, we're saying that we use 15.5 for for our one-on-ones, kind of like cadence that on our team. So it's just like creates this, you're like, what did we do last time? Oh yeah, there it is. There's a record of it right there. That's what we agreed we were gonna do. Cool. Did it happen? Are your untouched ops lower? Hey, we said you were gonna. We observed last time that your self prospecting wasn't where it needed to be. We said that over the next 2 weeks you were gonna touch 50 net new accounts and source 4 opportunities. Did it happen? Did it happen? Right? We got to systematize the looping back there. Cool. And then importantly, when you're doing this like observe, orient, decide, act, and like loop back, what you should be doing there is like like you're doing the practice of coaching, right? And so the I wanted to kind of characterize some examples of kind of like what is coaching, because you can do non-coaching behaviors in one-on-one, which is like not super helpful, or you can do coaching behaviors in your one-on-ones with it, which is helpful because it actually changes rep behavior, makes reps better. And so kind of some examples here would be things like when's a lucky deal coming in, Sean, versus hey, like what's concerning you about this deal that maybe you as a manager have a hypothesis about, or hey, can you make your forecast bigger versus, hey, I've noticed that your forecast is pacing behind it. Are there ideas on things that we can pull things forward, avoid this situation in the future? I need you to do more activity. You can imagine, that sentence being dropped in a one-on-one versus, hey, I've noticed that your meeting volumes over the last, few weeks have been lower than your peers
Yeah.
or than you. So like coming with data. Do you have
Yeah.
an idea of like what might be contributing to that? What are some of the other examples you might have here, Sean?
I just want to call out, like, I love this slide first off, and I learned this early on that, and it's a really bad kept secret, is that coaching is actually still selling. Just
Oh,
because you were
totally.
an A at one point and you stop
Yep.
selling to prospects doesn't mean that you have to stop doing that with your own team. So, for example,
Oh yeah.
boss, like on the left side, not coaching. Well, you can't really imagine, like, as a seller, like just giving like one-liners and hoping like value recognized, context understood, action
Oh,
actually being
with
had.
with yeah, what one-liners to your prospects? Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
like that doesn't work. And so giving context, giving reason why, giving value props, and going towards the desired outcome, just like you would do if you were working deals, is exactly how you should be looking at coaching with all of your reps. Otherwise, things just fall on deaf ears, just like prospects that ghost you because value wasn't recognized. So I love this example, and there's so many different ways that like you can continue again practicing this with like your VPs or your directors or what have you, of like, help me with context, help me tie back value so people actually understand and act.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. And I had this aha moment when I was reading Five Secrets of a Sales Coach, where
Corey Bray is the man.
it, yeah, it's great. They there's like this conversation that the manager, like the fictional manager, is having with one of their reps, and they're essentially just like doing deep discovery with them, where they're really like kind of like provoking them to about really think deeply about some of the like the defects in their sales behavior as a rep, and like like asking very pointed questions that are provocative, that kind of like open their eyes. B, really characterizing to them the negative implications associated with not fixing things, right? um like opening their eyes to like the future, like ideal future state, like
Right.
positive benefits associated with like the changing, like why change, why you why now, why change, why us, why now, like why change, why this thing that I'm saying is your manager, and why now do it immediately. And the answer to, just spoiler alert, the answer to that is not because I'm the boss. That doesn't work super well. um um yeah,
What?
and
No.
I just remember having that aha moment while reading this. Again, this is actually one of the books that we're offering to folks. So if you want to go ahead and get a copy of this along with those other guys, we'll go ahead and drop the link here in the chat. So I think what we want to do is just kind of talk about like an example of of like what data driven coaching as kind of facilitated by a one-on-one can kind of look like here. um, so cool. So what we had is, and this is actually this is an example from an Atrium rep. So it's using Atrium data. It's also an Atrium rep, which is kind of nice because we're at the point where we have, I think, like 12 sellers right now. And so we're kind of like, right there in the sweet spot, kind of like lower ideal customer profile for ourselves. And so we had this situation where a rep had kind of like lighter conversion rates. This is a conversion rate card right here. You can see on the y-axis. This is the percentage of conversion of ops that converted from these different stages. You can see this is the first stage, second stage, third stage. These are all stages right here. And so what you could see is that this rep in orange had had some areas of conversion that were a little bit lower than the peer average there, as it's represented in blue. Specifically, you could see that he had, an up funnel conversion problem. He also had like a down funnel conversion problem. Things getting a proposal that were not converting out, right? Which we don't love. We don't love proposals not converting to the next step, right? We definitely want to send those contracts.
That'll hurt your forecast a little
And
bit.
yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, we got all this great stuff down funnel. Oh, do you? Um, yeah, and so one of the things you can kind of see here is what we coach this rep kind of in two places. One was helping him get those things out of the top of funnel, converting better. Getting out of meeting pending. You can kind of see this. This is again, a conversion rate card here, but instead of it being all the stages, it's instead out of discovery, and you can see that he was a little bit low here at that point in time, and then got coached up on it, and then boom, it jumped much back higher into above team average. And you can see that like this blue person right here was kind of like a top performer on the team, and so like this was like the aspiration there. And so you can see after the coaching, bink, jump back up, much better conversion coming out of the top of the pipe there. And so what was so great about this is that this is a different Atrium card here. This is a card that we call the stage reached card. It allows you to see how many opportunities got to a given stage in a given time period, because stages are important, right? Like not all stages are created equal. Some, you might have a special stage like a live pilot. We're a good example of that, where because Atrium takes like 5 minutes to set up, all of our reps always sell on customer data. So getting a free Atrium account set up for people is a really kind of key part of our sales motion. And so the problem is, of course, is if you're not converting out of the top of funnel there, you're probably not going to get those free accounts set up. What you can see here is after that coaching for this individual rep, you can see that his number of ops that gets to that pilot stage just kind of like jumps through the roof there, right? Which is great, because then and so that was the first thing. The second thing is that you can see that his win rate, his conversion rate out of proposal, changes very substantially as well. That was the other place where there was kind of coaching in question there. You can see it goes from kind of being down in the dumps here to being much better. And so what kind of came out of this was we went from like this situation where this rep is like under their peers pretty substantially down funnel and also up funnel, to a situation where they're at or better than their peers, right? Top of funnel, doing a great job of converting things out of manager, mid funnel and from proposal. And then what was particularly kind of cool about this is, whereas this rep had initially kind of had this like leaky funnel situation, where they like new ops would come into the pipe, but then they would like close loss out like stage one, stage two. If now you're progressing a lot more things down funnel, well, guess what? This is what happens to your pipeline, because it's like stuff's hanging out longer in there. It's maturing, it's seasoning, and it's moving down funnel. And this rep is now a super top performer, which is absolutely fantastic. And so, and of course, the way that this happens, of course, is this is not done like through a drive-by, right? Like this is concerted coaching that happens on a recurring basis. Like A, it's not a drive-by. B, it's not once. It's not once,
No.
right? I mean, Sean, I can only imagine if your golf coach told you something once and it was just like done. Like, I mean, I guess he'd kind of be out of a job. But
Yeah, that's
right?
assuming that I actually spend money wisely for a coach rather than just buying new clubs, and depending on YouTube. But I want to
I,
like call something out there. So like, I'll use my own self as an example here. So like really early on selling, Pete made the example of like we sell on customers' data, and a lot of times I didn't ask for like context on maybe something that was trending in the wrong direction, and I kind of refer to that as like gotcha selling, like trying to see something, spot it, and be like, I'm a genius. I saw this thing that you had no idea about. Well, there could be an example of your rep actually understanding, like, I'm not doing something great from like a discovery standpoint or getting things to a pilot. And so, like, early on, we talked about like providing data, letting reps know about it is
yep.
like, let them see this and always ask for context so that when you go in with like these great insights with numbers, that you're just not, oh, well, there's 3 ops that are causing all of this right now, right? Or I had the wrong sample period. So it's something just to have in mind. Data is fantastic, but just make sure you have context behind it as well.
Yep, for sure. Wonderful. Well, I think we are nearly at time here. What I would love to say is one, thank you, Sean. That was excellent. I appreciate your participation and all of the super tactical insights. I mean, how many sellers you got going into you now? 6,
We got
7,
6 right now,
6. Yeah.
6
So
all
six.
stars.
Yeah. Yeah. You got your 6 reps that you're managing. Doing data-driven management with using Atrium, and then of course, like, I mean, you yourself have sold like north of 100 Atrium customers, and now we like you've seen like how the customers use Atrium. So just absolutely fantastic to have your expertise here, folks. If you want to get a copy of a copy of these books, one of these coffees for closers mugs, we'd love to send one out for you. Just go ahead and hit the hyperlink in the chat there, and you can sign up for that. And otherwise, oh, hi Angelica, you're back. Are you here to
I'm
kick us
back.
out?
I am. Well, thank you so much, Sean and Pete, for your wisdom today. And thank you, everyone, for attending. Be sure to check out the books and Yeti, as well as our RevX Fest next month. I'll drop the link as well. So please register for that event. And remember that this event is being recorded, and Pete's fabulous deck will be on the MSP website shortly. And we'll see you at the next event. Thanks, Pete and Sean.